and we went into Christian counseling that first day, and we closed the door to the office, and my wife began to cry like I had never seen her before. And as we got underneath those tears, we realized that pain was from a decision we made now 32 years ago.
Did you finally realize your dream of having a family, only to have your happily ever after turn into a nightmare? Are you constantly second-guessing your parenting, anxious about whether your child will make good choices and remain faithful? Have you neglected yourself to the point that it's taken a personal toll on you? Hi neighbor, welcome to Anchors of Encouragement. I'm Tim Maudlin, husband, adoptive parent, disciple of Christ, and ambassador of encouragement. I too felt the joy of having a family of my own, and I wish we could be like other families. But I found myself up late at night, anxious about my child's future and asking myself, why is this happening? Am I a failure as a parent? It was only by grabbing a lifeline from God and my friends that I was able to navigate the challenges of adoptive life. And now I can't wait to share everything I've learned with you. My mission is to be your friend and encourager, to throw adoptive parents a lifeline and offer biblical encouragement as you partner with Christ, providing stability as your anchor when you need it the most. If you're ready for real and raw talk with strategies and insights that lead to peace beyond comprehension, so you not only survive but thrive in life's storms, this podcast is for you. Hope and healing are on the way. Hi neighbor. Joining me today is my neighbor from North Texas, Jeff Bradford. Jeff serves as president of Human Coalition, one of the largest pro-life organizations in America with over 250 employees. He and his wife Tricia have personally experienced the trauma of aborting their first child in 1992, but have found strength in each other and God. Today, Jeff will share his personal journey and explain how it inspired the book he co-authored with his wife and how it also inspired the work he does at Human Coalition. Jeff, thank you for joining us today.
Tim, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I appreciate that. Now, we were talking before a little bit. We're both football fans. You're in North Texas, and I didn't know if you were a Texans fan or a Cowboys fan. You're a Cowboys fan. I'm okay with that. If you were a Texans fan, since I'm in Indiana, we might have some rivalries going on, but we're good on that. But you remember the old Cowboys with Staubach and those guys. And I remember those guys growing up too.
I was a huge Staubach and Aikman fan, the Cowboys of old. It's a little harder to be a Cowboy fan these days, but we're trying.
I understand. We've been in a drought with the Colts for a while since Peyton retired, and Luck retired unexpectedly too. But anyway, it's all good. It's just something that we have in common that we both enjoy. But we have something today that is much more important than football or activities of that nature. Can you share your story with us and take us back to how that all began?
Sure. I'll tell you the beginning because as we look back now over a decade, seeing how God has worked in our lives, and sometimes when you're going through it, it's a lot harder to see how God is moving. But as you mentioned, back in 2010, my wife and I sold my company and started a consulting firm. At the same time, the previous 8 or 9 years, my wife and I helped start and build and lead a church, and it split during the recession of 08-09. The churches went through some financial issues. It's a long story, but ended up getting split up, and we lost our church family. We had felt like we had given so much of our time when I wasn't working 60 or 80 hours a week in my company. We were in church, and our kids grew up in the nursery, and we had really put so much into that. Well, when it split, my wife and I had felt like that we had given away so much of our own time, that we'd neglected our marriage, that we had put so much into church and so much into business that we had neglected each other. And we now have four children, but at the time they were very young, and we decided to go to Christian counseling. and we went into Christian counseling that first day, and we closed the door to the office, and my wife began to cry like I had never seen her before. And as we got underneath those tears, we realized that pain was from a decision we made now 32 years ago. During our wedding engagement, we got pregnant. And I grew up with my father. My parents had divorced when I was about 10 years old and stayed with my father, my sister and I both. I was very close to him, looked up to my dad. And we would have said we were a Christian family, and yet looking back, I would kind of define that more as a cultural Christian family. We didn't understand the Bible. We didn't understand God's character. And so when I went to my father and told him about our pregnancy, I got very bad advice and ungodly advice and unwise advice. And within a few days, we ended up at Planned Parenthood and took the life of our first daughter. And we didn't talk about it for 17 years. And it wasn't until two of the co-founders of what is now Human Coalition, when I had started my consulting firm, they hired me and got to know them. And one day, that same week that we were in Christian counseling, they handed me their card and said, "We save babies from abortion using the internet and business practices." All the things that I had used in my manufacturing background. I thought, "Oh my gosh." And I remember just looking down and shaking my head and saying, "Lord, what are you doing?" And so it was the first time as a Christian husband and father that I saw the devastation of abortion firsthand. And I was intrigued really by these business guys that were using science and data and technology and innovation to save lives. But I couldn't help but realize what God was doing, that you couldn't deny that, say, it being the same week that we're in Christian counseling, talking about our abortion for the first time in 17 years, that the co-founders of Human Coalition handed me their card. And so I was intrigued. God really opened my eyes to the issue of abortion, and I began to really look at what they were doing, and ultimately told them I would help as a volunteer, and I was asked to be on the board. And that was the beginning of what is now Human Coalition. And, we started in a living room, three of us on with laptops and TV trays. And today we're one of the largest, if not the largest, intervention organization in the country that works both with women who are planning to abort. So we minister and serve women who believe abortion is their only option and bring them into a system of care where we're helping counsel them, but we're also helping them through social workers with housing, education, employment, childcare, all those reasons why women believe that abortion is their only option. The culture is told that they can't flourish unless they take the life of their child. And we say, no, you can. With a little help, we begin to help empower women's choices to become a flourishing mom and family. The other side of that of our work is legislation. And we know how important legislation is. We just overturning Roe cost the lives of 63 million children. And so we work to bring good legislation that's really informed by the work that we do with moms, and bring things like the Heartbeat Act and chemical abortion legislation that reduces abortion, saves lives, and cares for moms. And that's the work of Human Coalition.
That's some story, and it's interesting that it was birthed around the same time that you were going through your own healing. And if this is too personal, you don't have to answer it, but why do you think you suppressed that for 17 years, that conversation?
Well, Tim, there's probably nothing you could ask me that's too personal. I think it's all in our book, Beauty from Ashes.
Yeah.
We wrote
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
a very
That's great.
transparent memoir of our story. I think it really comes down to deep shame and regret. Uh,
Hmm.
even though we led church, my wife is a worship leader and myself as a lay pastor, because no one talked about abortion, because no one talked about the life issue, we felt like it was the unforgivable sin. We could talk about anything in church except abortion.
Hmm.
And so we sat silent in the pews and from the pulpit, leading and growing churches. We had a home, we were home team leaders. And this was a subject that felt too taboo to ever bring up. And so therefore there was never any healing. And my wife and I didn't even talk about it. We had suppressed it so much, as many people do that have abortions. They either suppress it and go silent and dark for years, or they become pro-abortion advocates.
Do you find with your work with Human Coalition that there are other birth mothers who aborted? Do they go through the same roller coaster of emotions that you've been through?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of biggest lies and of our culture today, of the media, that women don't suffer from abortion. Once you take the life of another human being, there is no getting around the fact that you have participated in taking the life of your child. And so women suffer. My wife, we talk about it in the book of just what we went through individually and collectively as a husband and wife, as a family. We ended up telling our two oldest about our abortion, which was one of the hardest conversations we've ever had. And so it's affected all of our relationships in deep ways, but it also affects our communities and our churches. So women are suffering in silence, and men who, like myself, who compartmentalize. We tend to stuff things and compartmentalize, but it's still incredibly tender today that I was not strong enough to stand up for my wife and child. That has haunted me for now 32 years.
How did you ultimately find hope and healing?
Well, as God will, in his grace and mercies, we went through a tsunami of events in 2008 and 9, and then finally in 2010 when we went to counseling. Our world felt like it was falling apart, and we felt like our marriage was following that. And by God's goodness and grace, He allowed us to go through some trials that ultimately led to our understanding that many of those issues, and my wife had deep, bitter roots of resentment and wondering if the men in her life would stand up for her and the children. And so God just brought all that together for us, and we began to finally bring it out in the open so that there could be healing.
What advice would you give to someone who's going through the same situation you were experiencing? Because you said you got bad advice from your father. What kind of advice would you give to someone?
Well, we talk about, my people perish for lack of wisdom and understanding. I wish I had understood more about the life issue, that this was a child in the womb, that it wasn't a blob of tissue. We believe that it was legal, so the government sanctioned it. It must be okay. We rationalize things because we were trying to get out of a situation that we didn't want to be in. And even though deep down we knew that it was wrong, I think it's imperative that pastors and priests across the country talk about the issue of life winsomely and gracefully, that there's understanding and knowledge and wisdom, because people perish, children perish from a lack of knowledge, from a lack of wisdom. And so certainly we didn't understand the reality of life in the womb, that it's a child, that it's our child. And so I think a lot comes down to that. And I think there's so much silence in our communities about life, and misinformation and lies about abortion, that we're losing millions of children a year. I remember when I first started into this work, God just gave me a picture. Can you imagine if somebody had a bomb? I remember 5 or 6 years ago, there's a bomb in Austin, and they were bombing these little communities, and they were looking for the bomber. I mean, if somebody was bombing elementary schools, first grade classes, and we lost 3,000 children today from bombs across the country, do you think as Christians we would be up in arms doing everything, as Americans, that we would be doing everything humanly possible to stop bombing the next 3,000 children. And yet that happens every day in America, that we lose 3,000 children in the womb, and it goes by silently and unseen.
How has Human Coalition as grown as you have had your own experience of hope and healing? How has that grown since it both came about the same time?
Well, we started with three people. Today we have over 260 employees across the country. And
Hmm.
we've always started it with a vision of building a true competitor, a national competitor to Planned Parenthood. And we believe that we have to have a multi-prong approach. Abortion is a complicated issue. It touches many factions of our country. And so it's not a single issue that's creating abortion. It has to do with multiple factors that women are going through, but ultimately, we look at two major prongs. One, we need to save lives today and do everything we can to rescue every child that God will give us by working. And so we use the internet when women are Googling for abortion pills, where to have an abortion. We want to be number one or two on the Google list so that they will call us and we can give them true empowered options. So we go through with nurses a counseling session with them to understand what an abortion is, what parenting looks like, what adoption might look like. And then we talk to them about, do they know there are services for women? And so we ask them, what's creating the reason why you believe you want an abortion? And a lot of time it comes down to financial issues like housing, or they've lack of a job, or underemployed. It could be childcare. There's a myriad of reasons. And so we help step in the gap there and say, hey, if we could help you with that, what would the desire of your heart be? And 76% of the women who believe abortion is their only option will tell us, if my circumstances were different, if I had some help, then I would want to parent. And that just breaks our heart, that these are not the what the media portrays, that they're radical women who just want to take the life of their child to be empowered. No, the real women on the street level say they would prefer to parent. And so we're building a national rescue system that can intervene, working with pregnancy centers and other. We have over almost 10,000 organizations that we've curated that can come alongside her, and we quarterback those services. So most women in that situation just have no idea that there's help like this out there. And if we can just get that message out, if we can be in front of her when she's Googling that she believes the lies that abortion is her only option, 76% of those moms will go, no, no, no. If I could just have somebody walk alongside me, I would want to be a mom and flourish. The other side of that is legislation. We have to have good laws. Laws are instructional sometimes for people. People believe now that after 50 years that abortion is a right. So it has instructed the culture that abortion is okay. And so we have to fight for good laws that actually move the needle for moms, that help save lives and care for moms. But we must care for moms. We must stand in the gap as Christians, as American citizens, to say, hey, how can we help through this period to help you get back on your feet? And moms are incredibly strong and resilient. And so we want to help empower them.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're not only telling there's other options, but that you're willing to help and offer assistance because, it's one thing, I believe every life is important. I don't believe in abortion either. Um, but we don't want to just be, uh, saying, okay, you're a baby killer.
Right.
That's not the way to win hearts over, not the way to win hearts at all.
No, and my wife and I were just talking about this morning. I mean, I truly believe that people want to be good,
Hmm.
that even those that are pro-abortion advocates, they believe they're doing something that's right, in their mind. I think they think that they're helping women. And that's why I think this message, and even our why we wrote the book, is to help people understand that That's not the only option. I mean, these women go into Planned Parenthood in the abortion clinics with all these issues that make them believe that abortion is going to somehow change their life for the better. They walk in with all those same issues and they walk out with the same exact issues, except now they've taken the life of their child and they're dealing with that. At some point in their life, they're going
Hmm.
to deal with the aftermath of taking their child. They will realize it someday. And no one is celebrating the taking of, as much as the media wants to say we're celebrating these things, no one, when they look in the mirror, says that I'm celebrating that I got to kill my child today. And somehow that's going to make all the other issues go away. Why aren't feminists asking Planned Parenthood? You're a $2 billion organization spending hundreds of millions of dollars on elections and laws that don't help moms. Let's actually all work together to actually empower moms with housing, education, employment, childcare. Those are the things that Planned Parenthood should be caring about if they really want to help women.
As you said, 76% would choose to go ahead and parent the child. Now, since I come at this from an adoption point of view, because I'm pro adoption, my wife and I adopted two sons.
Oh, God bless
Uh,
you.
how many of these women, even when they have resources or whatever, how many of them, that percentage, go ahead and choose adoption as an option?
It's very low,
Really?
unfortunately. Women who believe abortion, especially those that are planning to abort, because they want to get rid of the quote unquote problem as fast as they can without anyone knowing. And so the last thing that they want to think about is being pregnant for 9 months, carrying a child. We literally have women say, I would rather kill my child than give them up for adoption. Now, many believe they've seen movies about foster care and kids in really difficult situations. Many of them think that's the same as adoption. And so, one of the things that we really work with women at Human Coalition is helping them understand the beauty of adoption. And the more that we're helping come alongside them with true help like housing, education, all these wraparound services, that they begin more open to the conversation of adoption and the beauty of adoption and open adoptions and all the things that are so good and that they can become a part of that family. And that changes. So we work with adoption agencies all over the country. Lifeline Children's Services, Herbie Newell is they're a fantastic group that does amazing work. And so we try to help counsel moms to be open to learning more about that. And we've doubled our referrals to them in the last few years. We think that's really important. Obviously, as Christians, we're all adopted into
Hmm.
Christ's family. So
Hmm.
it's a beautiful thing.
I had a conversation with my oldest son's birth mother, and she says, I don't believe in abortion. And I've told both my boys, regardless of how they might feel about being given away, and there's some challenges there, I said, to your mother and myself, your birth mothers are heroes
There's
because
nothing.
they chose life,
Yes.
and we would not be parents. We would not have you in our lives had they not chosen life. And so that in and of itself, and that alone puts them up on a pedestal in my book.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you're offering, you're partnering with Lifeline. Herbie's been on the show before,
Oh, good.
and yeah, he's been on the show to talk about Lifeline. And so I'm glad that there are resources out there to either help the mother parent the child so she can find the resources necessary to parent the child on her own. But if that's just not a possibility, and for our birth mothers, I know the one, it wasn't a real option for her. She needed someone else to parent the child. And, God bless her for choosing us.
Yes.
I told my son, we didn't choose you. Your birth mother chose us. And God was in working with this to make it all happen as it did. Your story is just amazing. Tell us a little bit more about the book and where people can find it, because I think this story, or I know this, your story is going to help other people in this situation.
Well, we're excited. We were on Amazon's bestseller list, so you can find it on Amazon. Beauty from Ashes. Also go to beautyfromashesbook.com is another way to learn more about it and some of the stories. It was a story that I never wanted to be told, honestly. We were so ashamed. Even I remember coming into this work, and I remember really struggling and wrestling with God asking me to be a part of the pro-life movement. And one evening, no intention, I watched Schindler's List. And I remember
Hmm.
the end of that movie and him looking at his car and down at his ring and saying, I could have done more. I could have saved more children. That same week, I watched Amazing Grace, the story of Wilberforce. And I was like, I was wrecked.
Hmm.
I said, Lord, I'm going to go help these guys get started. And I said, I'm going to help you raise $1 million. I'm going to take off 90-day sabbatical. And then I'm going back to my consulting work. But that was the way I thought I could help them. And so we had a $3.4 million business plan. We were business guys. We raised
Hmm.
capital before. So we said, okay, let's put a business plan together the same way you would try to raise capital for a for-profit business. And we went to every house in Dallas, Fort Worth, anybody that would open their doors, went down to Highland Park, which was one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Dallas, and people opened their doors. And we worked really hard for 90 days, and people loved the idea of what we were doing. But we were only raised $14,000.
Hmm.
So I'm a finance major. I realize how important zeros are, and we were a few zeros short of our goal. But God got us on our knees, and we began to pray every Saturday morning for 9 months. And because of my fundraising skills, we were out of money. We had $7,000 left. We all in the ministry bank of what is now Human Coalition, and that represented 1 month of our work. And so what we were doing, our original business plan was really just to be a lead generator for pregnancy centers. At
Hmm.
that point, less than 2% of women who were searching for an abortion had already made up their mind, and they were actively procuring a scheduling an abortion or looking for pricing. We used the internet to get them to Google when they were searching an abortion near them, to get click on our ads and call us, and we were routing that to pregnancy centers. And so that was the original idea. We were paying marketing contractors, we were building the technology to be able to monitor and measure all of that. So if we couldn't measure it, we wouldn't do it. So we started building everything from the click to the call to the appointment, kept set and kept, and then the life decision. I was in manufacturing, so I was like, man, if you reverse engineer that, you could essentially tell people how many babies they could save based on the internet traffic that we could capture. And I was
Hmm.
like, this is a no-brainer. We can go raise $1 million. Well, we were a little short of that. And so every Saturday morning, we were praying and asking the Lord. We said, we felt like you've given us this incredible idea, but nobody's listening. One Saturday morning, we had one more month of kind of paying our contractors and everybody else. We all had our own businesses or running companies. I was driving to Houston with my son for a soccer game, and that Saturday morning, we just kind of had it out with God. We were kind of almost shaking our fist, saying, "Lord, what are you doing? You gave us this idea. We have one more month. You got to show up. You got to what we don't know what else to do, but we know you do." And the next week, we got a call from a family who had heard about us from a guy who was in our offices a couple of months before, and he was walking. He met his family in west of Fort Worth, and as he was leaving, the mother said, "Hey, if you know anybody in pro-life, we'd like to help." And he said, "I just met these business guys about 2 months ago. Why don't you give them a call?" Well, they called us that week. We went down and presented our plan. They asked us a ton of questions. And the next week they called back, asked even more. And the following week they said, "We want to fund your first 2 years." And they gave us
Wow.
3.4 million to get started. And so three of us started on laptops in the living room. And today, by God's grace, we have 260 employees, building a national rescue system, a competitor to Planned Parenthood, to be able to reach women at a large scale. We do that through telecare, where we can use the internet to reach women who need help, who are looking for an abortion, get them to call us. immediately connect them with a nurse under a licensed medical doctor's care, and then help with social work. We have caseloads of women that we can help them find housing and help with educational lack of education or job resumes and helping them find jobs. It's a beautiful thing when the body of Christ comes together, and we work with thousands of organizations across the country where we can help quarterback some of these resources, because moms are just lost in that situation. They don't know where to turn, and the only thing they've been told is, well, go kill your child, and then everything somehow is going to turn out okay. And we know that's
Mhm.
just not the truth.
Well, I think these uncomfortable conversations, like you described with your book, and we have some uncomfortable conversations on this podcast about adoption trauma.
Yeah.
Um, they're necessary so that, in your case, women who find themselves in a crisis pregnancy know they aren't alone and know they have options. Because you're telling your story, it's better to deal with this up front than to suppress it for as many years, because it's going to come out. Trauma's going to rear its head at some point. So, as we close up today, I like to end these interviews and episodes with a daily doable. And the question I had for you is, what can people do to help and get involved in caring for birth mothers?
Well, there are so many ways I think you can get involved in the helping of rescuing lives and caring for moms. A lot of communities have pregnancy resource centers. I really encourage them to encourage their pastors to talk about the issue of life in winsome and graceful ways. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that if the pastors are not talking about life and adoption and foster care, then our people perish for a lack of understanding. There's no wisdom. And what that pastor cares about, their congregation is going to care about. So if we're going to change the culture of one that breaks our hearts, what breaks God's heart, he cares about life. Certainly we all know that as Christians. And yet we allow this to go on day after day after day as if 3,000 children are not being slaughtered in the womb. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think there's education. We have to do it. We can't be afraid to talk about the life issue. It's not a political issue, it's a spiritual issue. So I think working with our churches is paramount. Human Coalition has a whole division that helps them work with churches to give them the resources and the tools and ways to talk about this in winsome, graceful ways, but also getting the congregation involved. We work with Care Portal. You may work with that group that helps with foster care and adoption so that the church can go online and help with resources. That's one of the things that we do is help gather resources for these moms and help with the kinds of resources that I've mentioned throughout the podcast. That's important. Prayer obviously is important. And, supporting pro-life work, whether that's organizations like us that work both nationally and locally. We have 7 pregnancy centers. We have telecare that works in different state by states where we can reach women and bring them into this system of care. So supporting pro-life, I will tell you, I feel like there's some exhaustion after Roe v. Wade. A lot of folks think that that was the end goal, and that was just the next chapter. Things have actually gotten harder after Roe, and the state by state fights are harder. So we can't take our foot off the gas. We have to do more. We cannot let Roe become a negative uh, and think it's now done. We have to fight harder than ever before. The pro-abortion factions they're winning state ballot, constitutional ballot initiatives. They're winning the conversation in the media. They're spreading lies and misinformation about life, and we've got to combat that. For Christians who care about this issue, we can't let this continue on the path that it is right now.
More time than ever to roll up our sleeves and be Christians,
Yes,
be who
sir.
God calls us to be. And you've outlined a number of ways that individuals can participate in this and give voice to the voiceless. Thank you
That's it.
so much for the work you do and for being on here.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your podcast today.
Jeff shared a moving story with us today, highlighting that hope and healing are still possible even after making the decision to have an abortion. Here are a few of the takeaways. Number 1, There's a need for wisdom and understanding regarding the subject of abortion. Number 2, talk about the issue of life in winsome and graceful ways. Number 3, it's more important than ever to roll up our sleeves and be the Christians God calls us to be. Number 4, look for ways you can actively participate in pro-life activities and advocate for those in crisis pregnancies. And number 5, pray. Pray for the unborn. Pray for their birth mothers. And pray for opportunities to help. If you want to become active in this national rescue system, see the show notes for a link to the Human Coalition. Also, check out Jeff and his wife Tricia's book, Beauty from Ashes, a Christian couple's journey from abortion to redemption. That's all for this episode. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, this is Tim encouraging you to do what you can now. If this podcast has given you the courage and confidence to face storms in your life, the number one way you can thank me is to leave a written review on Apple Podcasts. Tell a friend about the show. Take a screenshot of this episode and share it in your Instagram stories and tag me at Tim Maudlin. You can also connect with me in my Facebook group, Anchors of Encouragement. So until next time, this is Tim encouraging you to do what you can now.